All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are excited to welcome you to today's On Track Lunch and Learn session with Angela Lamb from the University of Iowa about preparing teens for college. This week, Iowa College Aid and ICANN are partnering together to provide virtual college-going informational sessions for students and their parents and their families. You can learn more about the sessions taking place throughout the week by clicking in the link that we will put in the chat box here. All right, so before we get started, I'll quickly review some housekeeping items. We are in a Zoom webinar setting, therefore you'll need to use the chat feature to ask any questions to our speaker. We'll be actively monitoring the chat box and we'll make sure to get your questions answered throughout the session or before the end of it, for sure. All webinars this week are being recorded and registered attendees will receive the link to the recording next week. School counselors will also receive recording links to all sessions next week. If you do not receive them, please make sure to reach out to Tamara and she can get those to you. We'll put Tamara's contact information in the chat box also. All right, so with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Angela, and she's going to tell us more about preparing teens for college. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to share with everybody and talk about how we can help students be ready for college when it's time to go. Just first, real quick, who am I? As they said, my name is Angie Lamb, and I'm an assistant director here at the University of Iowa in our academic support and retention office. But I am not, I'm not here to talk about the University of Iowa today. I'm here to talk about your students. So I will provide contact information at the end if anybody would like to reach out to me afterwards. But we're going to talk about ready, willing, and able. How do we prepare our teenagers for college? But before I do that, I wanted to also talk about what we're not going to talk about today so that you can be anticipating the information. First, we're not going to talk about what classes the students should be taking. So should they take calculus? I'm not going to tell you what classes to take. I'm also not going to tell you how to select a college. That is a whole other webinar. Or how to pay for college or how to complete a FAFSA. I know there's tons of resources and lots of other webinars happening this week on that. So you will get that information as well. Or to write a college admissions essay. I'm not going to cover that. Or how to prepare for ACT or SAT. So just putting all my cards on the table, that is not what I'm going to talk about. However, what I am going to talk about today is three very important, slightly complex topics that it's really important that students have this information and families, parents and families and teachers to help our students prepare. And this is preparing for any kind of post-secondary opportunity. It's not necessarily just going to a four-year institution. This is information that all students can use. So first of all, what do I mean by ready? Well, I'm going to talk about academic preparedness and what that is and what do I mean by that. Willing. Also, we're going to talk about academic tenacity. What is that and how does that contribute to a student's success? And able, college knowledge. What do I mean by college knowledge? What does that look like and how can we help foster that within our students as well? So let's get started. So there's kind of three components first to academic preparedness when I'm talking about academic preparedness. The first part is key cognitive skills. So these are skills that the brain uses to think and to read and to remember and reason and pay attention. Essentially, these are the skills that we use to learn. Cognitive skills have to be developed over a long period of time, becoming intuitive intellectual behaviors and thought patterns. Luckily for us, I believe that this is how the education system is built, right? So that we actually start getting students to develop those key cognitive skills at a developmental level as soon as that education period begins. These also play an important role in processing information, and underdevelopment of one of these skills could make it a little bit more difficult for someone to learn. So what do I even mean when I'm talking about cognitive skills? What are these? So let's find out. I want you to spell the capital of Iowa backwards out loud. So I'll give you a few seconds to spell the capital of Iowa backwards out loud. Thinking. All right. Maybe some of you have tried, maybe you have given up already, we'll see. But what were the skills that you used to do that? So first of all, I had to write this out because there's no way I could just do this, right? SENIOM space SED, capital of Iowa backwards. What skills did we use when we were trying to complete that task? We used our key cognitive skills. And also, side note, I have 7 that are listed here. Some say there's 8, some say there's all these different numbers. So we're just gonna go with this. This is 7 key cognitive skills, but just know that there is a lot of literature and information out there that has different skills, but in general, they all have the same kind of end goal. So first of all, the first skill you had to use is you had to pay attention, right? So you had to listen to my instructions and to understand what I was asking you to do. You had to remember those instructions. So once I gave you those instructions, being able to process that working memory and be remembering, what is it she asked me to do here? I also asked you to recall the capital of Iowa. Note that I didn't say spell Des Moines backwards. I said spell the capital of Iowa backwards. So you had to utilize those long-term memory skills and really reach back into that long-term memory to recall the capital. You also had to decide how you were going to solve the problem. So kind of thinking through, do I write it down? How am I going to do this? So your logic and your reasoning skills had to be utilized. You also had to maybe picture the words, read them backwards in your mind, kind of think through what that's going to look like. So that visual processing part. And then because I asked you to sound them out loud, you had to use auditory processing, right? To sound those letters out loud. And finally, the speed at which you were able to do that task is your processing speed. So these are some of those key cognitive skills that I'm talking about when I talk about skills that students need to be developing. So a second component of academic preparedness, so this first section of being ready for college, is competence in those core content areas and core academic skills. So what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, meeting the standards in those core content areas, that crucial educational framework that includes all of these important subjects. And this is not an all-inclusive list, but those subjects of math and science and social studies and English and world languages and the arts, these are all part of those core content areas that students need to master. This is the part that often, this is what we think about when preparing for college, and we don't really think a whole lot further than that. We think, okay, I took the content, now I'm ready for college. But as we're going to discover, there is a lot more to this as well. So another part, or another like a core academic skill that we need to be helping students develop is robust writing skills. Writing really exists in some form or some iteration across all subject areas. I mean, even math and science, especially, that writing skill is a skill that has to be developed. So effectively communicating your ideas and writing meaningful reflections is such an important aspect of education. Also demonstrating progress in that writing and revision process. So as a student, I would expect a student in 7th grade to have a different writing skill level than maybe an 11th or 12th grader. So showing those skills have been developing over time and being able to take feedback and revise that process and learn from feedback. These are strong writing skills increase the student's capacity to participate and to engage, and therefore increasing their capacity to learn. So while you can see, because they exist in some form across all subject areas, having that ability to effectively communicate and reflect via writing is so important. Another skill that is often included in these core academic skills is research skills. And I'm sure everyone's thinking research, like, you mean science? No, I mean These are also skills that are practiced across all subject areas. So when I'm talking about research skills, it's much more broad brushstroke there. So I'm talking about those skills that require students to approach learning with an inquiring mind, and to really be thinking outside the box, and those critical thinking skills, problem solving, analyzing, utilizing those critical thinking skills, being able to reflect on things. So research skills in the sense that being able to synthesize new and old information to arrive at an anticipated result, or to know if you haven't gotten to an anticipated result and how to make changes and go back and redo that. So when we're talking about research skills, we're not talking necessarily about the actual logistics of the research, but what goes into those skills. So competence in core content areas and core academic skills. So writing and research skills, and then being able to master the content that is expected of you. The third, and real quick, this, when college instructors design their courses, they are designing them with the assumption that students have developed these skills. So they're designing them with the assumption that students have been developing their writing skills and their research skills and their critical thinking skills, and their ability to connect information. They're expecting that. And a lot of students, oftentimes the younger students, just expect, just give me the answer, like X, Y plus Z, it should be this answer. Tell me how do I get to that answer? What is it? Just tell me what you want me to, to regurgitate onto this test paper. College classes are different. College is expecting the student to utilize these skills to come to the answer, and to be able, maybe not going to spell that answer out correct, completely. They're going to expect the student to be able to take information in and process that information and come up with an answer, or come up with a result. So that's a pretty big difference, really, in the expectations in a college classroom. The third part of academic preparedness is this idea that there are essential behaviors that students have to develop ahead of time. So they have to be learned and practiced over a long period of time. And this is really what makes deeper level learning possible. This is content mastery that is possible with these skills, or with these behaviors. And students who are considered college ready, we would expect that they exhibit an ability to self-monitor and self-reflect and adjust their habits when necessary. So thinking about their essential behaviors, and then making adjustments as needed. So what am I talking about when I talk about essential behaviors? I mean things like strong study skills, strong study habits, time management, very important, note-taking, good note-taking, exam preparation, active reading, using resources, asking for help. These are all essential behaviors that we need students to be developing prior to arriving on a college campus. So some strategies to help develop that academic preparedness. And I will preface this by saying these strategies are research-based or best practices, but I'm not going to go into all of the science behind why I'm giving you these strategies. So I'm hoping that you'll just trust me that these strategies, the outcomes can lead to academic preparedness. So the first one, helping students set clear academic goals. And a lot of times I like to use the SMART goal framework, and I can name what SMART goal means like anytime I'm walking around, but when I'm in front of people, all of a sudden I forget things. But the S stands for specific, creating a very specific goal. So a lot of times a student will set an academic goal of, I want to do better in my math class. Well, it's not very specific. I want a specific goal. I want to increase my GPA by 0.3%. It also needs to be measurable. So again, if you say like my son who's 10, I was writing goals with him for his class the other day, and he said, I want to do better in math. And I was like, I don't know what that means. How are you going to know if you've reached your goal if there's no way to measure it? So goals need to be measurable. They also need to be applicable. A lot of times, make sure that goal is actually something that the student cares about and can work towards. Relevant, the same thing. Like, is this something that a student that will actually help a student reach their larger goals and time bound. A really well thought out goal is going to have a kind of like a built-in check system, right? So you're giving yourself a timeline that says, I'm gonna reach this goal by this certain point. So developing SMART goals or clear academic goals, finding value in challenging assignments. I always tell my students, if college is easy, you're doing it wrong. College is meant to stretch your, like help you learn and challenge you. Same thing with high school though. Those assignments that are more challenging, that's where the learning is happening, right? So really help students to understand those challenging assignments. They're not there to just be a roadblock or a barrier. They're there because that is where the learning is going to happen. Also reflecting on what they're learning and what are their potential gaps in their knowledge and skills. So a lot of assignments that I give my first year students include doing something and then reflecting on what they learned by doing that thing. And I get a lot of eye rolls like, oh, I have to reflect on what I learned. Yes, stopping and thinking about what did I learn? Where are my knowledge gaps? What am I not comfortable with? What am I more comfortable with? So being able to really think about that. Also developing strong study habits and time management. Oh my goodness. I'm fine talking to students anytime that they, want me to come in. I'm happy to talk to students and talk about how to develop those study skills and time management skills. I would prefer that conversation be happening early in high school and not August of their first semester in college. Because I tell students the time to learn or time to develop those good study habits is before you get here. But that's fine. Even if they haven't, we can still work on that. But developing those good time management, those skills, a lot of students, we often hear from students that are new to college. We ask them what their favorite thing is, and they're like, oh my goodness, I'm in control of my life. There's nobody telling me what to do. I have, I get to decide for, their whole lives. They've lived by a bell schedule and there's not bells anymore. Like they can do what they want. And then we ask them, what is something you're struggling with or something you're really scared of? And then they're like, oh my goodness, I'm in charge of my own life. I have to follow my own schedule. I have to make my own. So like, it's kind of a, coming from those both sides. So time management is something so important to be working on before you get to college. Also talking with admissions counselors and school guidance counselors about course requirements for different things you might be interested in, but also, so, that taking the core content areas, but also being able to be flexible so that you are not, so you're making it possible for you to maybe change your major or change your career direction. I would not expect a 17 or 18-year-old student to know what they want to do with the rest of their life. In fact, here at the University of Iowa, the largest major for our first year incoming students is open major. And I think that's fabulous because they have some time to really take classes and decide like, what direction do I want to go? So when you're taking those classes, making sure that you're keeping all of your options open. And I'm saying that knowing that it is much easier said than done. Also taking a really holistic approach to personal wellness. So setting a sleep schedule and sticking to that schedule, mental health wellness, physical health and wellness, all of those things helping students to learn how to take care of themselves, learning how to note when maybe their body is injured or not feeling well and how to handle that. And also normalizing asking for help. It's so important that students from a very early on understand that asking for help is normal and it's expected. And we would actually see a student who's asking for help as someone who is a very strong student. And so normalizing that, asking for help and letting students know this is a tough topic. So if you're struggling with this, feel free to talk to me because, I struggled with it too when I was your age. So normalizing that concept of asking for help. Okay, so I want to move on to the second component of today, the willing. And this part, I wish I could just tell students, listen, academic tenacity. So quick question. Would you rather drive that little teeny tiny car across the United States from ocean to ocean? Maybe take a couple months, a summer, depending on, you know, how fast you can go. But when you're done, you would get $100 million. Or would you rather bike across the state of Iowa, which we know takes about a week, for 1 million? Which would you rather do? Would you rather put in those 3 months or whatever for $100 million? Or I'll do a week and I'll get 1 million. So when you're thinking through what you would rather do, what were some of those decision-making processes that you were using? Were you thinking about your willingness to persist? Like, I don't know if I really want to like drive that little teeny tiny car. Personal aspirations. Do you want $100 million? Is that even something you care about? Or your priorities and your goals? Will that get in the way? If I have to take a whole summer off to drive that little car across the United States, that's going to get in the way of my life. Or that ability to value the journey as well as the end result and be like, yep, I'm gonna persist through this and get that $100 million. So while one option is not necessarily better than the other, but in this scenario, we're kind of thinking about that academic about tenacity, or that determination to succeed. So first, what do I even mean when I say tenacity? I'm talking about the quality or fact of being very determined. That determination. You are determined to complete the task, no matter the journey. You are determined to get to the end. So when we talk about academic tenacity, we're talking about the mindset and the skills that allow students to look beyond those short-term concerns and longer term, and look at the longer term or higher order goals, withstand challenges and setbacks, and persevere. So tenacity is that determination to succeed, and academic tenacity is that willingness to, you know, persevere through that. I remember when I was an undergrad, it took me 7 years to get my bachelor's degree because I was working full time and going to school in the evening, and it was a long process. And I distinctly remember driving home one day. It was fall. I know it was fall because the colors of the leaves were all, you know, there. And I remember driving thinking, I'm never going to finish this degree. I have like 3 years left. This is taking forever. And you know what? That was a long time ago. It was like 15 years ago. So, but I'm still able to look back on that and think, wow, I really was like, I was really feeling like so broken down, but I had that determination, like, no, I'm going to keep going. But you know, at the time it was hard. Like I just didn't see the end coming, but I was able to display some academic tenacity and think, nope, I want to do this. So an academically tenacious student is going to display some certain characteristics that we might expect. So first of all, they're going to display grit and perseverance. So in higher ed, we love the word grit. We use that a lot. A student is very gritty. They're willing, they're able to overcome challenges, look at something, you know, what was the outcome? What could I do differently next time? So that grittiness and that perseverance. Also connecting relevance of education with achieving their career goals. So even when am I ever going to use this stuff? Like thinking, well, wait a minute, this is part of the whole education process. So I see that, you know, this particular thing, I might learn, I might not need at this exact moment in my life, but this is all part of education, and this is all going to contribute to my career goals in some way. My husband is a high school science teacher, and he hears that all the time. When am I ever going to use this? And usually if it's like chemistry, he'll like tell them baking, you know, things like that. But helping students to understand, like, there is a point to all of this, right? They also operate from a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. So this idea that learning isn't, the ability to learn doesn't have a cap on it. I'm not saying that everyone can become a neuroscientist, but we all have the ability to learn. We all have the ability to increase the amount of information that we have. So the idea that we can learn a concept or approach a concept with, I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to be persistent. I'm going to use my resources. I can do this. Maybe I didn't do well on the quiz, but I'm going to come back and revisit that, and I can do this. So that growth mindset, rather than well, I guess I didn't learn how to do that. Whoops, I'll move on to the next thing. Like that's more of a fixed mindset. Academically tenacious students also value those difficult assignments, again, and those challenging tasks, and they see the value in those learning and growth opportunities. And I say this knowing that like most teenagers aren't going to be like, oh my goodness, I totally see the value in this assignment as a learning and growth opportunity. I understand that that's not going to happen. But so a student might say, okay, this assignment is really freaking hard, but I know that if I can accomplish this or, finish this assignment, then I will know how to do it and I can use that information for the next step. So it's kind of more of like a intrinsic thing, or inside they're thinking I can use this information. Also, academically tenacious students have short and long-term goals that provide guidance and flexibility, both in their high school and post-high school and career plans. And they're able to analyze and adjust those behaviors and those goals as necessary. So I have a lot of conversations with students about, I'll use again, time management as an example, having them look at how are you managing your time? What tools are you using for that, and how's that working? And maybe here's how we can adjust it. And then a week from now, you revisit it and see how it went. So an academically tenacious student can kind of analyze and adjust those. It may not be a formal analyzation process, but they have that ability at the level that we would expect at that age to kind of think through that and think, well, that really didn't work. I need to try something different next time. The paper took a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. So next time I have a 3-page paper, I'm going to give myself more time. So some strategies that you can use to help develop that tenacity is setting those clear academic goals again, right? So some of these strategies you're going to see a couple times. Also, cultivating curiosity. I love the curiosity that my elementary and middle school age children have about the world, and maybe they get part of that they get from their science teacher dad, but having curiosity, I think, is such a fabulous asset in life, to look at something and be like, I would really like to learn more about that, or tell me more, or how does this work? But cultivating that curiosity, and again, I know that is much easier said than done. But help students find and develop those interests and those strengths and those things that they're good at. It's so fascinating to see a student when they're younger, trying all the things, baseball and dance and, all the things. And then by the time they get to their later high school years, they've kind of started to whittle off some of those things. Maybe I'm just going to do this one sport, and then I'm going to do band, or, really helping them figure out what are their strengths, what things do they really like to do. That provides some building blocks for some important personal development later in life. And also connecting that class material with one class, from one class with another, or with real world examples. So sparking that ember of excitement and lifelong learning. And I remember one time in high school, I was taking psychology and sociology the same semester. And I remember like a light bulb going off, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of overlap in these two classes. How fascinating. And so being able to like use content from one class and maybe apply it in another, that's a great skill for a student to have. So helping them to see where you can do that. Reframing setbacks as opportunities to reflect and learn and apply new strategies. So thinking about a setback not as oh, whoops, I made a mistake, I guess I'm just can't do this, but reframing it as, okay, I made a mistake, but what did I learn from this, and how can I do this differently next time? And again, normalizing asking for help. It's so, so important that students know that asking for help, using their resources, especially in a college campus, there's a ton of resources available. It's so important that students know we want them to be using those. An approach, again, approaching learning with a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. A few notes though that I do want to add when I'm talking about this academic tenacity. Unfortunately, I know you cannot will or make a student care about something, but you can help them see the why in something. And a lot of times when a student understands the why behind something, like why am I doing this assignment? Why are we learning this? It kind of can help spark that interest and spark that curiosity. But and I have students too that I'm like, oh, why don't you care about this as much as I do? Or why don't you find this as exciting as I do? I love talking about these, I love talking about certain topics and they're so exciting to me and it's so frustrating because I want students to care. So I have to talk about like, why is this important? Why is this exciting? And also I know that when we're talking about tenacity or this ability to persist and make long-term goals, I also understand that trauma, a student who's experienced trauma, that journey looks very, very different for them. And so I also wanted to at least acknowledge that and understand that I know that this journey does not look the same for everybody. And so I understand that trauma can sometimes affect long-term planning. It can affect the ability to involve long-term goals in your planning. So I did just want to acknowledge that too. Okay, we're going to move on to the last part now, the able. So college knowledge. So we've talked about being ready. We've talked about being willing. Now we're going to talk about, are you able to do this? So I want you to imagine with me that you have been you've been dreaming of building an airplane and you are so excited. This is going to happen. It's your lifelong dream. You have the relevant education. You've magically got the education that you need. You are committed to this. You're so excited. You've been telling everybody, I'm going to build an airplane. It's going to be amazing. I am ready to do this. Maybe. Are you though? Are you ready to build that airplane? You have the education. You really want to do it. But are you really ready to build that airplane? Maybe. A couple questions to consider in your thought process. Do you know how to procure all the parts you're going to need for an airplane? Where are you going to get all these things? These are not things they sell at Walmart, right? You're going to have to find them somewhere. Do you know how to find those parts? Are you familiar with all of the local and federal policies you'll need to be able to follow when you're flying that airplane? Also, speaking of, do you even know how to fly an airplane? Like, have you flown an airplane before? Do you know how to fly one? Do you know someone you can ask for advice about how to build or fly an airplane? Is that a resource that you have access to? Where are you going to build and store your plane? Are you going to build it in your front yard, in your garage, in an airplane? Like, where are you going to do this at? Are you going to be able to focus solely on building your airplane? Or is this going to be like a project you work on in the evening after work or after school? Like, what's the timeline on this building airplane situation? And also, does your family understand the commitment that you're going to be making to building this airplane? This is not a small project, right? This is going to take a lot of time. Are your peers and family members and support system, are they aware that this is a big commitment and this is something you really want to do? But it's also going to take you away from some of your other activities and other commitments. So that is what we mean when we're talking about college knowledge, that kind of what we say, kind of like a hidden curriculum almost of what higher ed is. So college knowledge refers to a student's ability to navigate the hidden curriculum of higher ed. There's so many things that we just assume a student knows how to do. To understand both the formal and the informal policies and practices and procedures that are on a college campus, and some are completely different, depending on which college campus you're on. lack of that college knowledge, lack of that understanding of those different policies and procedures can really help. It can make a student or leave a student feeling very disconnected or isolated. This oftentimes will happen in a first generation college student. So a student who doesn't have a parent or legal guardian who has earned a 4-year degree, maybe doesn't have someone who can help them navigate this hidden curriculum. I know I was a first gen student and I went to school at night and I was older than most of the other students. And I remember going to the building where all my classes were and sitting outside, even in the wintertime, to study in between classes because I didn't think I was allowed to be in the building unless I was in class because I wasn't a typical student. I was older. I didn't think I was allowed to be in there. I thought that was only for the other students. And now I look back on poor Angie and I want to say, go inside, it's cold. But understanding how to navigate some of that stuff. So it can feel really isolating. And it's so important that we have this ability to navigate college. So when I'm talking about areas of college knowledge, I'm referring to knowledge in areas like admissions processes and paying for college or how to fill out that FAFSA. Campus resources, using all things that are available on your campus. There's a lot of resources we have available on the University of Iowa campus. Students didn't even think about that they may have access to. Enrollment policies. I didn't know you could drop a class. I had no idea. If I had known that, I would have done things differently. Had no idea. I didn't know that if a class wasn't going well or I needed to maybe take it some other time, I could drop it. I had no idea that was even an option. Resume building activities. Is the student aware of in addition to getting a college degree, they also might want to be working on some resume building opportunities. So an internship or a job in their potential career path, things like that. Or even major in career exploration. Is the student familiar with all of the different options that are available to them, or the resources on a college or high school campus that can help them determine those things? Student engagement, getting involved in activities on a college campus. Do they know how to do that? Wayfinding tips. Do they know how to walk around a college campus? Do they know how to find things? Again, I went to a really tiny high school and finding a classroom was pretty easy. I don't even know if I ever looked at the class number because everyone just knew these are the 3 science classrooms. I was probably well into my first semester of college before I realized most buildings, if the class number if that number starts with like a 2 or a 3, it means it's on like the 2nd or 3rd floor. I had no idea. No idea, didn't know that. It took a long time to find my classes, right? Also, I came from a rural area and we didn't ride buses where I grew. I mean, it was a school bus, but we didn't ride city buses. And so learning how to use a campus bus, that was terrifying. I didn't know which door to go into. I had to stand there and watch first to see how people are doing this. Things like that, like helping students learn how to do those things. Just those, and the president of our institution tells a very great story about her experience as a student starting out and not knowing how to find the dining hall or pay for food at her campus. And so her first week of college, eating McDonald's because she just didn't know where to go. That's a very common story for students who just don't know how to navigate this hidden curriculum of a college campus. So what are some strategies that you can use to help a student develop these skills? And these are some strategies that you can use before a student even gets to college or after they're already there. So first of all, taking advantage of those opportunities to visit a college campus. A lot of times high schools will have a day where they'll take kids to schools or college campuses, or their parents will take them. Again, didn't know this when I was growing up, but public school campuses, that's a public property. Anybody can walk. I could have come up here as I grew up like 10 minutes from here. And I could have come up here and just walk around and figure out where buildings are. I didn't know you could do that because I wasn't a student, but it's a public institution. I could have done that. So taking advantages of those opportunities to get onto a college campus. Attending events like this, the Iowa College Aid and Iowa College Access Network events are so important. These cover a lot of this information. College information nights, whenever a high school or an organization hosts these, attend those if you're able to, and talk to all kinds of different people and all kinds of different institutions. Because that hidden curriculum looks different at every institution. Once you get into college and are there and are ready to get started, please go to all of your orientation events, especially the information fairs. Most colleges have a pretty robust orientation session, and they almost always include some kind of information fair. Go to the information fair and find out the resources that you have available on that campus. So important. Get involved in campus activities. So students, once they get to college, just figuring out what student organizations they want to join, or just different areas that they want to participate in. So getting involved. Getting an on-campus job is a great way to figure out how to navigate college. First of all, a lot of times those on-campus jobs might be a little bit more flexible when it comes to scheduling your hours around your classes. You know, those class schedules change every couple months. And so sometimes off-campus employers are not as willing or able to adjust your work schedule. And so you have to, you know, enroll in classes around that. But a lot of times if you're able to get a job on campus, it's often a little easier to go to your employer every few months and say, here's what my academic schedule is for the fall semester. What hours can I work? It's also a really good way to connect to campus and to get to know people on campus, and to get to know someone who can maybe serve as a mentor, or get to know other peers or other colleagues on campus. All really great ways to get connected to that institution and start to get to know a lot more about how to navigate that institution. Getting to know your college instructors is so important. We encourage our students, go to office hours. And a lot of times we say office hours and students are like, I don't know what that is. Does that mean like that's when I'm supposed to stay away because they're working in their office and they don't want me to talk to them? No. Office hours are when instructor specifically has time set aside just to talk to their students. And so we encourage students, even if you don't have a question about the content, go talk to your instructor, you know, for just a few minutes, check in, say hello. Building that relationship will be an asset to a student later on, especially if they need help, if they need like a letter of recommendation, or getting connected to an internship or research opportunity, or some kind of having questions about a career field that they're interested in. So building that relationship, visiting those office hours, so important. Before classes start, I always encourage students, walk around and find out where your classes are. Do that not the first day, do it before the first day, right? And I always tell students here at Iowa, walk the route to your class. So if you're going to be in one class one day, walk the exact route to your next class. So like, don't just find the classes, like walk the route so you know how long it takes. And then add like 3 minutes or so to that time, because you're going to be walking behind like 5,000 other people, and it's just not going to go as fast. So learn that, just literally learn how to navigate your classes. So walking, getting around, and starting to get out and figure out where you're going to be going to class. Plus, then that way you're not late on the first day, which is so awful. I've done that many times. Developing a communication plan. Once you get to college, it's so important that you have a communication plan with your friends back home, or your loved ones, your family members. Developing a plan like, okay, I will text you once a day, or I will call you every Sunday evening, or if you text me, at least give me a couple hours to respond, things like that. So developing a communication plan so that you both have the same expectations. We even encourage students to, especially if they're far from home, include the pets, their beloved pets in their communicate. Ask mom or dad to hold up Foofy so you can say hello. That's so important to students to be able to see those things. It really helps. It really does. It helps with morale and really helpful. Again, normalize asking for help. We try to get that message out to students as much as we can. Asking for help, we want you to be doing that. So normalizing that, and that asking for help does not mean you don't know what you're doing and blah, blah, blah. It means that you are caring about what you're doing, and you are willing to get help with that. And then another important thing to do is to make sure the student, once they're on a college campus, they have found their campus financial aid office, or where is their advisor house, their library, the career center, all of those things. Again, walk around and figure out where that stuff is, because you're going to need that at some point. At some point, you may need to talk to someone financial aid. At some point, you may need to talk to a librarian and need help, navigating databases for a research paper. All of those things, find out where those resources are. Okay, so I covered a lot of information today. I understand that this is a lot of very complex information coming at you. So again, a quick reminder of what we talked about. So first, that ready component of helping a student prepare for college. Are they academically prepared? And remember, the preparedness doesn't just mean have they taken the right classes. It also means are they developing their cognitive skills? Are they developing their writing skills and their research skills? Are they developing good academic behaviors, good study habits? Are they learning how to manage their time well? Side note on study habits, whenever I come across students who are like, I didn't really study in high school, so I'm sure I'll be fine in college. Ooh. Learning how to study in high school, do it in high school. So even if you're like, I know the material, get in the habit of like studying for a quiz or something, or get in the habit of taking good notes. I oftentimes will encourage students to, if they're taking a class that they are not quite familiar with, the words that they're going to be hearing, to Google like chemistry lecture and listen to a lecture and practice taking notes. Those are the sorts of activities that students can be doing before they get on campus, so they feel much more prepared. And I know there's a ton of teachers out there who are really helping their students develop these skills, and I just think that's fabulous. So thank you for doing that. Willing, the academic tenacity, what is that persistence like? How is a student able to set goals and understand how the steps they're going to have to take to reach those goals, and being willing to work through that? And then of course, are they able to even navigate college? Because there is all sorts of things that a student needs to be aware of when they get to college, that maybe isn't going to make it so that they can't earn a degree or a certificate, but it's sure going to make it a lot easier for them if they're able to navigate that hidden curriculum that we say. I am so appreciative of the opportunity to come and speak with you all today. This is my contact information. It's my email address. Just angela-lamb@uiowa.edu. I work at the University of Iowa, but that doesn't mean that that I am not willing to support other students. My job as a public employee working in higher education is to help all of Iowa's students prepare for post-secondary opportunities. So even if you have zero intention on coming to the University of Iowa, know that I am a resource for you if you have questions, because that is what I'm here for. I am here to help students, to help Iowa students reach those career goals and those academic goals that they want to. So please don't hesitate if you have questions or, want to reach out to me. Maybe my admissions office wouldn't like me to say this, but I don't care where you go. I want you to go where what is best for you. But I will help you get there and I will help you finish. And I'm happy to do that. So if I don't know if there's any questions or, but that's really kind of like all I had for today. So yeah, if there's anything in the chat or anyone has any follow-up questions that they would like to ask.
Thank you so much, Angela. I don't see any questions in the chat yet, but for all the attendees, please feel free to type your questions in the chat. Since we are in webinar mode, you're not able to unmute, but please type in any questions. We'll wait for a few minutes and see if any questions come in.
I'm going to put my email address and make sure I got this right. Okay. I'm going to put my email address in the chat. So if anybody didn't get it on that last slide, if they want to write it down. The information I covered, every single one of those different points, I could have done like an entire half day webinar on. So there's a lot of information I wasn't able to cover, or I wasn't able to go into as great detail. So hopefully folks still feel like they got a lot out of it. So yes.
Hey, Angie, this is Tamara. I just want to say thanks for this very practical presentation. I did have a few questions and then I ended up crossing them off because you answered them along the way.
Okay, cool.
So
Awesome.
This was mainly just related to what strategies students can do now in high school to kind of develop those skills, which you covered. And then also just talking about resources that are available at some universities and colleges. So this was a really great presentation. If you could share those slides with us, if you don't mind. Absolutely. And we can share it out with our registrants.
Yep. And I went back and forth on should I go into specifics about study skills and resources, and I thought, no, I want to kind of go a little different direction. But that's a great thought though, about making sure you get to know those resources that are available. Especially in a large institution, there's so many things that students don't even think of. I mean, we have a student legal services department. Who knew, right? So all of these things that if a student is in need of the service, we probably have it. So yeah. And again, I'm happy to come and talk to some seniors in April of their senior year about study skills and time management skills. Happy to do it, but sure, man, if I could come talk to them their freshman year of high school, that would be fabulous. Getting started early is really important.
Oh, sure. I don't see any other questions in the chat box. I'm going to thank everyone for joining today, and thank you very much, Angela, for your time, for all the excellent information that you've shared with us. As a reminder to the attendees, there's a variety of Lunch and Learn webinars happening this week. You can learn more about those and register for them through the link that we put in the chat box earlier, and you'll receive the recordings for them all after they have been completed. I want to thank you all for joining and spending time with us this afternoon. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.